We're glad you're here. Spurs get busy while there is tournament madness going on. The NBA continues, and they're welcoming on the Grizzlies. The Spurs, as we sit right now, are 15-54.
Yikes.
They are headed toward a worse record than they had last year.
Wow.
While employing the services of the rookie of the year. It's the math just, it doesn't seem to make sense. I feel like I need some sort of physics formula to explain to me how addition equals subtraction. I don't know how we got here.
Part of the plan, Rob.
And can you imagine if you are in fact Wemby? I mean, this does reflect rather poorly on you, whether you want to blame him or not. I mean, how can you be this good and your team be this bad?
It's I'm sure a frustrating and a maddening question for him. And it's, if you have to put one answer on it, it's because he's really, 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 really good. And so the gap between him and normal good players is massive. But the gap between him and the good players on this team is like twice that.
How important? I mean, it's very important, and the whole focus is on winning these games. And we've had our ups and downs in the season, but we know each other way better today. So it all comes down to all of our personal efforts to make this work. But it's going to work.
If it's going to work. We've been hearing a lot about, it's not so much about this season now. We got to be worried about 2 years from now with the contract. Well, let me ease everybody's fear. No matter what happens between now and then, Victor will sign another contract with the Spurs. It's the financially expedient thing to do. That's the one thing that the NBA does have built in, that no matter what happens, whether he blows up or whatever the case may be, the Spurs will have the right to pay him more than anybody else to keep him around. So there is the long term that the Spurs have at the barest of minimums 4 more years to keep Victor or to make him happy.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it is an election year. So,
you know what? Well said. But I think I would look at it more like it's a primary. And we're not quite at the election period yet. It's the primary. So we're auditioning for his running mate. We're trying to find his put together his platform as he runs for the office here in a couple of years. But he's just kind of messing around in the primaries now, trying to gather a little bit of support. They ask him about the plan for the future and his involvement there.
It's a lot of communication with the coaches and the front office, of course, to know, where we're comfortable with each other in the game, and where we're not comfortable, to know what kind of pieces we would need to add. So this is a lot of discussion, because at the end of the day, the GM, the front office, they know their job. They can do almost anything with what we got today. But it's a matter of how well they understand us, the players, and the coaches, about where we want to go and how we want to develop.
Where we want to go and how we want to build up. Should we be replacing in this statement I with we? What I want to go today, but it's a matter of how I understand the players and how the coaches about where I want to go and how I want to build up. Or should we keep the we? Because that means a whole lot of different stuff if he's using the royal we.
Right. You said replace I with we. You mean replace we with I?
Well, he said we.
Right.
But if I replace,
should we replace
I with we? Should we look at it like, okay, what do I want, and what do I need? Or because if we approach it like he is saying, the royal we, all of us, that's an entirely different thing.
So let me ask you this: who, outside of Wemby, for obvious reasons, who is the best Spurs draft pick in the last 15 years?
15 years?
Yeah. It's 2009. 2010. Who's their best draft pick?
Well, and a lot of those are drafting 30th, so I'm not going to,
Sure, but, even in the last 5 years,
Well,
right?
because there's also different genres. I'll say Devin was a really good pick, though.
Okay, so that's
And
the
then, I mean, if you talk about into the first round,
not trying to hate, but if that's if that's what this front office unearths after looking under every rock, then it should be the royal we. It should be I. I mean, it at this point, how can you? And I don't mean to act like they're terrible, but you can't just trust the Spurs front office at this point. You absolutely have to involve Wemby's opinion. They don't have a track record of sustainability there in recent history. You can't act like they found Manu yesterday. This is something, and beyond all of that, even if they had a sterling track record, this is the face of your city, the face of your of your area code. I mean, you have to let him be the most influential person in the building.
He talked about his participation and being included in the process.
It's the best. I mean, couldn't ask for better, because it's of course my job is to be on the court and make baskets, but the fact that we work together is the best for both our development.
He's playing a role. This is such a balancing act that they have to follow, because it is so evident right now that as the season has gone on, the scouting report has been attack him on offense. Go get in, go at him, go at him,
rough
go
him
at
up.
him. And that being part of it. And then the natural flow of the NBA game is to create switches, to get yourself guarded by somebody who can't guard you by pick or by, movement. The pick and roll is the classic example. I mean, the defense has to decide who you want to cover. In the modern game, the switches lend itself to the way Victor plays. Guards or small forwards are guarding Wemby a lot defensively. And then there's the switch, and he has to guard the biggest guy, or at least kind of patrol the paint to protect. But on the switch is when, we ideally like to see Wemby get guards on him. But guards are allowed to foul big men in the NBA. They're allowed to batter and beat them. They can swipe, they can hit. It's just the NBA game. Little guys are allowed to foul big guys far more than big guys can foul big guys, or big guys can foul little guys. Little guys are allowed to swipe and hit and do all that because they're littler. It's just part of the intention. Well, we're going to have to find a way to protect Wemby from that, because he is getting battered defensively or offensively. When he's got the ball, I can't imagine the beating. Look at his arms. I mean, he's just swiped and battered constantly. That switch has got to go away. We got to protect him from that on that side of the ball. And on the other side of the ball, as players begin to attack him, here's the problem. Either we're going to go with Wemby, and he is going to be, by every measure, a small forward, and we're going to allow him to guard these small forwards consistently, or we're going to have him switching on big guys like Sanguine and Embiid and Joker, and these guys are going to hammer him all game long, because he doesn't, by everything he's told us, I'm not putting on weight. I'm not going to add weight. It doesn't help my frame. I'm a guard that's 7'5". So if we're going to do that, we're going to have to draft appropriately to that, and it's going to be the kind of draft pick we don't want. We're going to have to go find another center. We're going to have to find another big. And it's not about point guard. I'm just saying, if we're going to do what Wemby and his people see him as, the thing that I look at when I'm watching, like last night, I'll tell you what, watching Kentucky, the two guards there, those guys didn't show. So I'm a little worried about the position there. But if Wemby's going to be what he wants to be, it ain't a big, it's a big guard. So defensively, we got the switching problem and all this other kind of stuff. Maybe the Spurs should be looking at, just a big defensive presence and look like they're drafting the same guy 2 years in a row.
I mean, there's certainly logic to that, and you laid it out. And if that's what Wemby wants, and that's how Wemby feels like he can be put in the best position to succeed, then, that opinion goes a long way. And I don't know. I mean, I think it sets up for some serious advantages, but it also sets him up to maybe not necessarily be the rim protector or whatever that we I mean, the dude needs to, I think if you draft another big, or you make that your priority, then, Wemby mentioned in his quote that his job is to get baskets. I would rebut and say your job is to get blocks. You know what I mean? Like I expect you to score. Don't get me wrong, but your job is to get blocks. I think the path of least resistance is going out and finding somebody who can score at an elite level.
That's what I was thinking.
You can't go out and find somebody who can play defense at this elite level so easily. And so you have to leave that job to him. It's more dirty work and it might be less fun or whatever, but that's our most well used, not just in the present, but in the long-term future. I mean, again, I feel like not that it would be a waste, but if you're just valuing him as an offensive player, I don't know that you're getting the most out of him over the course of his career.
My a good friend of the show and a good friend of San Antonio, Greg Moore, was a longtime media presence around San Antonio back in 2000 for about 10, 15 years. Did a lot of different stuff. And he used to always say, just because it looks good doesn't mean it's good for you. And I think that Wemby has a lot of this looks good. And, this is what I want to be. That doesn't mean that's what you should be. And, a Pop has to watch this balancing line of, I know what you should be doing. Trust me, I've done this before. But, Wemby and his folks got an entirely different idea and meshing these two things. And then you throw in a front office that is less than stellar. I mean, let's be realistic. Their draft picks have not been that good. I mean, Devin Vassell, in my mind, is the best we got. Who is the best draft pick over the last 5 years? 656-3776, the number to dial. David called in. David, who's the best Spurs draft pick in the last 5 years?
Oh, Rob, but he had said 15. I went back to Kawhi. You got Derek White. You got DeJounte Murray. You got the kid that pulled his shorts down. And, of course, the two we mentioned in the last. But it just seems like we're giving up on them too quick. I mean, look at Slow-Mo. He's been in the league 10 years. I mean, Derek, they got rid of an all-star guard to keep him. He was like untouchable with Boston.
But David, you could argue that without moving Derek, there is no Victor.
Yeah, that is the argument exactly. Without them moving or DeJounte, really.
That too, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we can go, well, they did that, and while I do praise the draft picks, they're not here for whatever reason. All those guys we talk about with solid quality, and some of these are long prior to Brian Wright. I think we should only be looking at the Brian Wright era. And some of these guys in the Brian Wright era, we're talking about the guy with the short shorts and hanging brain, and we're talking about weird Euro draft picks, and we're talking about passing on some dudes sanguine for others that maybe or may not have been paying out long term. There's a lot of question about this current front office, and does this current front office inaccuracy, does it jibe with where Wemby's people want to go? That question will be answered eventually. But man, oh man, this is I'm comforted in his comfortableness. It appears that Wemby's happy with how things are going. I think they're keeping him involved, and he feels like he's playing a role. But how much of a role do we want him to play?
If we play out, the one hypothetical where he just wants to be a 7'5" guard, who's got who's got the credentials to say no?
Well,
right, like
exactly.
If you're Brian Wright, and Wemby comes to you and says, I'm done with this center stuff.
Yeah.
You need to draft a 5, because
I'm tired of guarding him. I'm tired of getting beat up. I don't like.
Yeah. I mean, this is too much on my frame, whatever. Is it Pop? I mean, that's the obvious answer, but I mean,
well, could you retort to him like, well, okay, you want to be LeBron. Is LeBron a good GM?
I mean, no. Who's
LeBron
the best
has had
player
free
LeBron's
reign
ever?
everywhere he's been. He's got a lot of rings because he can carry guys. But if you look, I mean, his first attempt was pretty damn good. But after that, he's got another ring in LA.
His first attempt.
Well, I mean, when he put together the taking his talents to Miami, I'll call him the GM of the century for that.
Well, I know, but that was the most obvious thing of all time.
Well,
Right? Like
I'm
there's
just
a difference.
saying, if you're going to let your player be a GM, he's going to have to be like LeBron. You better go get some
Okay,
guys.
but I would go further than that. I would say if you're going to let your player be a GM, then you've got to spend some money.
Oh, well,
You know what I mean?
I
You've got
think
to be
that goes
willing
without saying.
well, you've got to be willing to go get the dudes he wants. And that's where I struggle to buy in. Even if we live in this, like, he's just a guard, whatever. But do we really trust the Spurs to go out and get whoever Wemby wants right now?
I do.
Like, I hope so. I mean, it's, this is the most important offseason in San Antonio Spurs history coming up. There's no doubt about it.
I think that I'm going to expand it. I'm going to say not this offseason. I'm going to say it's this 3-year envelope. Because several things have to happen. It can't be just this one. But several things do have to occur because a lot of the value, a lot of what the Spurs have to play with will manifest not this year, but the following years. I'm not going to just lay it all there, but I'll tell you what, an early wrong turn will blow this whole thing up.
That's true, but turning too slowly will waste this whole thing.
And here we sit. So what he's asked about the next 5 games, about how you're going to close out this run. And he said it's important, but I wonder how important it is for the Spurs for him. You know what I mean? How much do they feel it's important? Because Wemby sees it as. Do the Spurs think that the record is of any importance at all? Is there any concern about having the worst record in franchise history at the same time of having a Rookie of the Year? And the dichotomy of that?
That's the thing. Like, I mean, in your mind, yes or no? Wemby's Defensive Player of the Year. If you had to vote.
As we sit right now, it's slipping away from him. But yes, as right now, yes. But if we continue on what I've seen the last couple of games, no, it's slipping away.
That's his strength. You know what I mean? Like, again, my only problem with anything he has said publicly has been what he just said. That we played. That my job is to score baskets. No, man. I can go find baskets. I can find baskets so easily. Your job is to disrupt. Your job is chaos. Again, like,
but my job is to get buckets. He just told you.
I know, that's what I'm saying. I disagree with that.
Well, there is the fundamental issue, right? We hit it. I think what's good for you is this. Well, I think this looks good.
I want to eat chicken tenders. No, you got to eat your vegetables.
You got to have to eat your vegetables, son, for a lot of reasons, or at least a couple of peanut butter sandwiches. You're skinny. Look what Sanguine did to you. Oh, that's just it. I ain't putting on weight. Get me out of the paint.
Yeah, like that I'm not accusing him of running from anything by any stretch, but, maybe beef up for the fight. You know what I mean? Like, and again, I'm not saying he doesn't hold that disposition, but, get some Uncrustables and let's work. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not going to, the reality is, okay, you can look at yourself as a 7'5" guard. You are 7'5". If you were a coach of whatever team and somebody walked in and said, Rob, I got a player for you. Okay, great. Let me take a look. This dude's 7'5". Yeah, I think he wants to play guard. He wants to run point. What? And it is impressive that he can do that, obviously. Like, that's what makes him so versatile and so unique. But there's no way that that's where he's most valuable on the court.